Keynesian Economics versus Populism, the Fiscal Tightrope between Debt and Productivity. When examining the broad tapestry of economic history, the discourse is primarily divided into two major ideological poles. The first is the classical school, which places unwavering faith in free market mechanisms and the sanctity of balanced budgets. However, the cataclysmic events of the Great Depression in the 1930s shattered these traditional beliefs, giving rise to Keynesian economics, championed by John Maynard Keynes. Keynes revolutionized the world with a daring proposition: when the private sector is paralyzed by fear and refuses to spend, the government must intervene as the backup engine of the economy. By deliberately running budget deficits, the state injects liquidity into the system to catalyze the fiscal multiplier, a phenomenon where a single unit of government spending ripples through the economy, creating magnified value through job creation and successive rounds of private consumption. Keynesian strategies typically manifest as large-scale national structural investments, such as the construction of highways, hydroelectric dams, or comprehensive mass transit systems. These capital-intensive projects serve a dual purpose: providing immediate mass employment and establishing long-term strategic assets for the nation. The efficacy of this approach is bolstered by IMF research, which suggests that during profound recessions, the fiscal multiplier can escalate to 1.5 or higher, enabling GDP to recover far more rapidly than if left to the invisible hand of the market. However, this state-led resuscitation is a double-edged sword. While it fends off deflation and unemployment, it often leads to a staggering accumulation of public debt. If these investments fail to yield long-term productivity, or if bureaucratic delays miss the economic window, the stimulus can transform into a lingering fiscal burden. As we pivot from structural macroeconomics to what may be termed grassroots macroeconomics, we encounter the concept of populism. While technically sharing the tool of deficit spending with Keynesianism, populism operates with a fundamentally different intent. It arises from the political necessity to address the immediate grievances of the masses who feel disenfranchised by the globalized economy. Populist measures are characterized by direct redistribution, such as price subsidies for agricultural products or unconditional cash transfers. The immediate allure is undeniable. It provides instant relief and a rapid surge in local consumption, particularly since lower income brackets possess a higher marginal propensity to consume (MPC). Yet, as documented in the seminal work by Rudiger Dornbusch and Sebastian Edwards, The Macroeconomics of Populism, these policies often follow a predictable trajectory: an initial honeymoon period of growth, followed by severe supply bottlenecks, rampant inflation, and a catastrophic twin deficit crisis. The peril of consumption without productivity. A critical structural flaw in direct consumption stimulus is the emergence of unproductive consumption. When the state injects capital solely to fuel domestic shopping, the money circulates briefly before settling as profit for established manufacturers, often without enhancing the workforce's skills or fostering technological innovation. This creates an artificial demand that outstrips the country's potential supply. According to the World Bank, if consumption outpaces production, the nation inevitably turns to imports to satisfy the surge, leading to capital flight and a deteriorating trade balance. Furthermore, excessive reliance on consumption leads to a vicious debt cycle. Statistics from the Bank of Thailand reveal that a significant portion of rising household debt is comprised of personal loans and credit cards, debts that do not generate future income. Once households are ensnared in this debt trap, any subsequent government stimulus is diverted toward debt servicing rather than new spending, leading to a state of policy impotence. Productive debt, the strategic way out. The ultimate challenge for a modern economy lies in transforming unproductive consumer debt into productive debt. This transition is the only sustainable exit from the populist trap. The solution requires a tripartite shift in policy architecture. Budgetary realignment, from consumption to capital, governments must evolve from being mere distributors of wealth to becoming co-investors in the nation's future. Deficit-funded spending should be channeled into creating an ecosystem conducive to productivity, such as smart irrigation systems for farmers or digital infrastructure that connects local artisans to global e-marketplaces. World Bank handbooks on public expenditure emphasize that investment-led debt is inherently more sustainable, as the resulting economic expansion eventually broadens the tax base, allowing the debt to be self-amortizing. Human capital transformation, upskilling, and reskilling truly productive debt is that which is invested in the people. Governments should pivot from unconditional cash handouts to conditional cash transfers or vouchers dedicated to vocational training in high-demand fields like IT, advanced manufacturing, or modern business management. OECD data demonstrates that high-skilled labor generates consistent income growth over the long term, effectively turning a government expense into a stable revenue stream for its citizens, thereby reducing the future burden on the social welfare budget. Credit mechanism reform. Credit transformation at the grassroots level. Consumer debt often stems from a lack of capital for entrepreneurship. Financial institutions must shift their focus from loans for spending to loans for production. By utilizing alternative data and AI, lenders can assess an individual's earning potential rather than just their collateral. The Puy-Ung-Fakern Institute for Economic Research warns that debt moratoriums without income restructuring only facilitate persistent debt. Therefore, the goal is to ensure that new debt is utilized to acquire means of production, tools, machinery, or technology, rather than funding current lifestyle expenditures. The integrated policy model for the digital frontier. In the digital era, the synergy between fiscal and monetary policy must be seamless. This integrated policy model aims for synchronized policy action to ensure that deficit spending is precise and non-inflationary. Dual target synchronization. The Treasury fiscal acts as the offensive unit, injecting capital into new S-curve industries, while the central bank, monetary, acts as the defensive unit, monitoring liquidity levels to prevent asset bubbles. This model proposes tiered interest rates, where central banks provide low-cost liquidity specifically for productive loans through commercial banks, while the state provides risk guarantees for SMEs. The smart fiscal injector, leveraging CBDCs and blockchain, governments can deploy programmable money. This allows for targeted spending, where stimulus funds can only be spent on production-enhancing goods like education or equipment. Real-time tracking of the velocity of money allows for immediate policy calibration if liquidity begins to stagnate or concentrate in unproductive sectors. Automatic stabilizers 2.0, utilizing big data to implement variable digital taxes. When the system detects that growth is exceeding potential and inflation is looming, tax rates can be adjusted or subsidies automatically tapered. This reduces the need for massive one-time deficits by ensuring that smaller, well-timed interventions have a higher impact. The soul of the model. The heart of this model is a shift from reactive to proactive policy. It is about using technology to prevent populism from becoming a fiscal poison and ensuring Keynesianism does not lead to a mountain of dead debt. If a government manages its borrowing to build intellectual and technological capital, today's deficit becomes tomorrow's surplus. In the modern world, technology is the ultimate arbiter. It determines whether your budget will become a source of income or a burden of history. Debt is not inherently evil. It is a powerful tool if used with the right vision, at the right time, to create a return that transcends the interest rate.